Hey folks, Curtis Stone here. Today we're going to carry on our video series where we look at all the states and provinces of North America. And today we're going to be looking at Quebec, which is a very, very big province. I think it's actually the biggest province in Canada. And it covers a pretty massive geographical area. We're not really going to look at anything in the north because very few people live there. But we're going to look at a few places. I lived in Quebec for a number of years in Montreal in my 20s, and I liked it back then. One thing about Quebec is it's fairly humid, at least down in, on the mid to southern region. It's somewhat temperate. There's a lot more deciduous trees out here, but it is still a boreal climate. But it is somewhat more temperate. And that just kind of happens in North America when you cross into, this is boreal region, but then as you get towards more Pennsylvania, Virginia, this is all temperate. So that experience, you kind of feel that experience here. It's you get summer rains. There's more deciduous trees. It's very green. It's a lovely place. I really, really like the climate and the geography of Quebec. You get some mountainous regions. It's a lot more. I mean, it's nothing like British Columbia, but it's a lot more mountainous than Southern Ontario, and people often come up to Mount Tremblant from Ontario to go skiing. And it's beautiful. It's very, very beautiful. It can be very buggy in the spring and summer near a lot of these places with little lakes, but it's really nice. So let's talk about what are our no-go zones. Well, they're going to be fairly obvious as far as Montreal region, Quebec City. So I guess we did some smaller circles around Sherbrooke and Trois-Rivières, is that what? Oh no. How do you say it? Saguenay? There's a better way to say it in French. But kind of avoiding these metropolitan areas. Some of my favorite towns are in this region, though, I will tell you. Some of these little towns along the border here in Quebec are very, very nice, very beautiful and quaint. And English, actually. Quite a few of these towns are quite English, like Hemmingford, and there's another little town in here that I used to go to a lot. Where is it? Roxham Road is where all the migrants are just flooding across the border. I got kicked out of a hotel. I had a hotel here. This is years ago. I think it was 2018. I was doing a workshop, and I had a hotel booked here. And they kicked me out to make room for migrants that were just flooding across the border in Roxham Road. But anyways, some neat little townships in these areas. It is agricultural. There's a lot of big ag in these areas. But then when you get into some of these more rural pockets, it's really, really beautiful. But yeah, we typically, avoid the big cities and don't want to be too close to them. But, it's not so bad to be close to some of these other towns because you can come in to get resources. So maybe, I'm not saying avoid all this area around Quebec City. You might find some nice little pockets in here. But we just kind of do this as a blanket. If you've been watching this video series, we do this as sort of blanket terms. And I am broad. I'm going to miss little details. But that's just kind of the nature of what we're looking at. So some really cool spots in and some around these smaller towns here. You've got a decent sized town where you can get access to materials and things that you need as you're developing your homestead. So you might consider some of these spots. They're very rural, lots of trees, but then we've got some towns, La Petite Montreal there, on the outskirts of Quebec City here. This is beautiful along the St. Lawrence. This is amazing. Beautiful. A breeze coming through. It's lovely. If you've ever driven along any of these roads along the St. Lawrence, it's just stunningly beautiful, especially in the fall. Just beautiful. Up here too, you're going to get a bit of that maritime climate, getting close to the Atlantic, which will give you a bit of a warmer front. You'll have slightly milder winters along here because of the ocean. And then let's look at some properties. We picked out a few here. So there's 100 acres we're going to look at right here. And again, we just pick these out randomly, but this is something you might find. if you're going to look in Quebec. So we got a dead end road. That's always nice. Oh, look at this little homestead. One thing you'll find in Quebec, more so than any of the provinces to the west, and you'll actually experience this in some of the older towns in Ontario, there's a real pride in the homestead in Quebec. I swear, and I haven't visited much of the Atlantic provinces. I've been to New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. I've never been to PEI. But I saw a little bit of this out there, but there seems to be this, it's an old, I don't know what it is. It's an old thing. But there's a real pride in the homestead. You know, in British Columbia and Alberta, you find homesteads of varying types. Very commonly in British Columbia, you'll see just dilapidated crap. There's like shitty cars and just garbage laying around. In Quebec, you will rarely find that. I don't know what it is. It's just this, it's the older part of the country. Maybe there's just a bit more of a European pride in the homestead. I don't know what it is, but it's quite interesting. Because if you drive around the rural areas, you just see really immaculate, well taken care of homesteads. And I did notice the same thing in Nova Scotia, actually. So it seems to be an older Canadian thing. But yeah, I mean, this is a pretty sweet homestead coming in. You've got lots of access, lots of different buildings. There's probably some kind of business run here. But I mean, look at this. You've got this little mini lake. Or is that part of a river? Yeah, it is. It's part of a river spilling over this lake. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that word. But, you know, you've got this tributary coming through here, and fields, infrastructure, windbreaks, lots of forest. Beautiful, beautiful homestead. 100 acres, that one there. And, you know, in a place like this, you've got some of these beaudry, you've got some small townships that you can get things from. But, you know, if you really wanted to, yeah, you're way out of Montreal. You're really close to Ontario. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually quite, if there was English here. You'll often find, too, in some of these Ontario towns, they're French-speaking, too. But whether that's specifically the case there, I'm not sure. Let's take a look at another hypothetical 27 acres here in this other area. So again, on a nice body of water, a lake. Lac Tiblemont. Beautiful. Look at this. Right on the water. Amazing. Private access, offset from the road, lots of trees, fields. Not a ton of infrastructure on this one, but you could build it. I've actually seen homesteads in Quebec to be fairly affordable when we've looked at them in the past, at least compared to the rest of Canada. But that's a nice little spot there. And then we got another hypothetical 50 acres over here on the Atlantic side. Yeah, right in here on a little lake. Oh, look at that. This is amazing. Lac Joseph. You've got your own little lake. Private access in. Not a ton of infrastructure on this property, and you might, if you wanted to develop something like this, you might want to take out some of these trees to develop that inner. Look at the resolution here. You just don't get any good resolution in parts of rural Canada. But, you know, if you were to think about carving out, you know, that inner sort of 5 acres to homestead, you might do something like this. Just carve it out in there. Keep the trees along the lake. This is going to be kind of marshy, so this will be definitely buggy in the bug season. Kind of late spring into summer, it'll be pretty buggy in here. But beautiful nonetheless, and tons of just trees around, small holdings of, you know, logging, forestry cut blocks. Looks like a lot of these have been replanted. And no big ag, you know, which is nice. Most of the big ag in Quebec is in the southern region, kind of south of Montreal. There's so much big ag around here. You drive around. Actually, it looks a lot like Missouri. If you're just driving around in here, you could almost close your eyes and you're driving around the farms, and it looks like a lot of Missouri over here, which is pretty interesting. But it's fairly flat, lots of just fields of corn and stuff like that. But yeah, that's Quebec. It's somewhat temperate. Very few people live up here. But it is a really nice place. And especially if you speak both languages. If you speak, French, number one. If you speak French, you're golden. If you only speak English, Quebec can be kind of challenging, but there are townships that are kind of old English. Quebec is kind of unique that way. There's these, and so is Ontario actually, because there's some towns in here that are totally French. And I guess that's just kind of the crossover with the interesting history that Canada has. So anyways, folks, if you guys enjoy these videos, check out my web class where I'll teach you how to use Google Earth and teach you some of the tips and tricks on how you can save a ton of time finding property. And you can do so by using software like Google Earth. Instead of visiting 50 properties, you could visit 3, but look at 100 online and rule out all of your the ones that you should have shortlisted to begin with, because sometimes you just miss a threat, something that if you zoom out and look for, you could find by using Google Earth, opposed to going there and then realizing, geez, within the first 5 minutes of being there, you're going, man, this place sucks. We wasted a whole trip coming here. So that's what this technology can help you do. All right, folks, where do you want me to visit next? Let me know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.